Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Everquest Old School. And on this episode, we are playing my Shadow Knight, who happens to be level 4 still. And we're just going to run out and kill some stuff. Now, one of my viewers actually asked me a question, and, it didn't even occur to me that I was still calling this, but when a Shadow Knight or a Necro or even a Monk falls to the ground, that is called feigned death. Now, I've been calling a fatigue death mainly because of my guild back in the day. Now, I was in several guilds back when the game first came out. I was in Amici, I was in Order of the White Rose. For a good 6-7 months there, I was hardcore raiding, and I went through several guilds, basically testing them out to see if they were what I wanted. As a cleric, you had that freedom. As other races, or other classes, I should say, you kind of have to do it in reverse. They will see if you're what they're looking for. As a cleric, you're so wanted, you're so desired, and there's usually not enough of you to go around that you can pick and choose what guilds you want. So I went through quite a few of them, but I believe it was Amici that I was in when this happened. But yeah, I was raiding pretty heavily, and there was I think it was a span of like 3 days where I quite literally only logged off for I think like 4 hours the whole 3 days. It was ridiculous. But what we ended up doing was we did a whole bunch of raids over that period. We also did a whole bunch of grouping during that period to camp, like the Golden Ifriti room and things of that sort. And I believe it was the last day I was going a little bit of bonkers because I hadn't gotten very much sleep, so I was kind of my usual crazy self when I have lack of sleep, and I was running around. I believe it was like Plane of Fear, and this was like the 8th hour that I quite literally hadn't stopped moving for more than like 3 seconds, because as the pooler you're constantly moving, and I always prided myself in being able to give this steady stream of experience, so much more than anybody else could provide, that when people were in groups with me, they would be constantly amazed and be like, wow, the experience here is really, really good. And, the next time they come to that zone, they would be like, you know what, the experience here isn't really all that great. It was the pooler I had, and they wouldn't get that realization right away. It would be like weeks before I'd group with them again, and they'd be like, holy crap, man, last time I grouped with you, I got like 4 bubbles in like an hour and a half, and then I came back here with somebody else, and I got less than a bubble in like 7 hours, and it was like, yeah, I mean, when you have somebody who's willing to pull, and you have a group that can take advantage of, that's the key. For me, I've been in groups as poolers where I have to slow it down because the group just can't handle it. I was constantly waiting on either the cleric to keep up with the heals because he has very, very little mana pool. He doesn't have very much wisdom, or for whatever reason, I'm taking hits harder because I just don't have the buffs that I should have or that I'm used to having to resist certain things. And so, yeah, I mean, there's always those little things you have to be aware of. But on this particular day, I was running around quite a bit, and we eventually ended up in the Plane of Fear. And up there, it's once you clear out enough of the zone, it really becomes a pooler's either dream or nightmare because it's constant chain pooling and things of that sort. And I was running around, and they weren't ready for the mobs that I had, and so I ran them around in a circle for, I think I had like 7 mobs on me, and the mobs up there take quite a long time to kill if you don't have the right classes with you. And I think we were doing it with less people than we were supposed to be, because I think like 4 or 5 people didn't show up, and so kills were taking a little bit longer. We weren't really having that difficult of a time, but it was definitely slower than it was supposed to. And so I found this nice little area where I just kind of ran them around in a circle over and over and over again. And like 30 minutes later, I was still running around. And so eventually I was forced to fatigue death because I think I lagged out or something, and they caught up with me, and I was about to die. And I could either have died or I could, feign death. I call it fatigue death, but I feigned death, and that's what I did. I feigned death on the ground, and then I wasn't able to get back up. It bugged me out, and I camped out, I came back in, and it was still feigned death on the ground. I had to literally contact a GM, and back in those days, they didn't always respond to you right away, and it would take like sometimes a long, long time, and you had to stay on, because if you logged off and they got to your ticket and you weren't on, they would either just get rid of your ticket altogether, which actually seemed to be the case, even though they said it wasn't. Or they would put it down on the very bottom of the list, and you would have to wait until the next time you were on, and somebody would check to see, which I don't think is the case, because I put in petitions that eventually I had to log off for whatever reason. I'd come back on, I'd sit there, nobody would come to talk to me for like 36 hours. I put in another petition like at 2 in the morning, and within an hour they're coming to see me again, and they're like, they have no clue about my first petition. They're like, I don't know where it is. I'm sure somebody has. Yeah, I'm sure somebody deleted it. But anyways, back to the main part of the story. My guy was stuck, right? He was literally stuck, and I couldn't pull anymore, and everybody in the guild's trying to help me out. They're call heroing me, and they're trying to duel me and see if that works and stuff, and nothing worked. And rewind and stuff like that people were used to now, none of that was there. It didn't really work, and so I was stuck there, and I didn't want to leave. I was one of those people who was really hardcore into it, and I wanted to stay to the very end, and I wanted to see all the cool loot that dropped that I couldn't pick up because I couldn't move. And so what the guild did was actually pretty nice, is because I was bugged, I was still able to loot if the body was close enough to me. And so they actually moved the entire raid over right on top of me, so that when they kill the mob, they tried their best that it would drop right on top of my corpse. And so if there was anything there that I had dibs on or something like that, I could loot it. And of course nothing dropped, but just the fact that they were willing to do that was just it shows me just how great the guild was at that time. But back to the main point of the story was everybody started cracking jokes about how long I had been running around in circles, and then it got out that I had been on for like the last 3 days straight. People started talking. They're like, yeah, you were in my group doing, pulling over there, and somebody was like, no, he was over in my group, and I'm like, yeah, that was after that one. And they're like, no, you were over here, and I was like, yeah, that was after that one. And somehow it got out that I was on for like 3 days straight, and people were like, you've been running around all day for the last 3 days. Your guy quite literally just got so tired that he just fell asleep on the ground. That's what it was. It wasn't feigned death. He was fatigued, and he died from being fatigued. And it doesn't sound that funny because you guys weren't there, but at the time it was freaking hilarious, because here I am laying on the ground, unable to move. There's no reason behind it, and it's late at night, and everybody's a little goofy, and I'm even more so because I've been awake for 3 days. And it's just one of those things that it caught on, and everybody in the guild started calling that fatigue death instead of feigned death. And after I think like 2 or 3 months, other guilds started doing that, and it never really caught on server wide, but those who wanted to have like that inside joke really allowed that to blossom, and I just kind of got stuck with it over the years, and now I still call it fatigue death. It's weird. I should get back in the habit of calling it feigned death, because I know some of you guys were like, what are you talking about? That's not the name of the spell. It was just one of those things. And for those of you who want to know when what was the name of that expansion that came out with those instances for Everquest, maybe some of you guys, I'm kind of interested to know if some of you guys maybe take screenshots of the leaderboard when that came out, because on my server, Interruck, I was #1 for I think 3 weeks, and that's because I didn't log off for that long. Like 2 hours maybe a night, just to get like a little cat nap, and then I would log on and literally be playing in groups in those instances, because I was one of those people who thought these instances were going to be the greatest thing ever, because at that time the server was so camped that anytime you wanted to do something, you quite literally had to wait on a waiting list for 5, 6, 7 hours. And I thought instances, okay, that's going to ease some of the burden. I didn't think it was going to kill the groups altogether. Now I think they're the worst thing that the game could have done. But at the time, I didn't know that. And so I jumped full bore into those. It was easy to find a group. You'd run in there, you do an instant together. It'd take you like 15, 20 minutes once you've gotten the hang of it. Sometimes even less than that if you had a really good group. And you'd move on to the next one. And most of the time, you would move on with that group and go on and do the next one. And you earn like 3 points or something like that for each of the successful instances you did. And there was several ones you could not really pick from, but the leader of the group could go over there and request an instant and request a mission, and the mission would be either like rescue, kill, like eliminate somebody, eliminate a named boss, or wipe out the zone, or there's a whole bunch of different ones. One of them was easier than all the other ones. It was quicker. And once people figured out how to do that one, I believe it was the rescue. Because if you knew where the guy was that you were rescuing in the zone that you were running into, you could run in there really quickly, bypass a lot of the mobs, just mez almost all the mobs if you really wanted to, and save that guy and run back out, and you're ready to go in like 5 minutes, and you got like 3 points for that. And once you had enough points saved up, you could go and buy stuff from the vendor, and they had some really, really good stuff, like armor that was really high in wisdom and stats, and then they had something that I had never seen before, which was flowing thought gems that you could actually socket inside of the armor. And you know, it was cool at the time, but it affected the game so much. No, he's gonna kill it. Oh great, come on, let me hit it at least once. There we go. One more, his 1%. Don't let him kill it, don't let him kill it. You suck so bad, man. 1%. Oh, I wish I could hit you. I'm gonna come back and kill you one day with my cleric, just for that, punk. Now these guys, I believe, are level 20. I don't know about the Iron Guardians. They may be a little bit higher, but you're going down for that, punk. Should not have messed with me. But yeah, if any of you guys have screenshots from Interrupt back in the day with the leaderboard, I would love to get a screenshot with my name on it. I wish I had taken one, but at the time, I wasn't really interested in keeping a track of that kind of stuff. I was having too much fun playing the game, and now I kind of wish that I had kept track of a little bit of that, just for prosperity reasons. Because how many people can say they were #1 for even a day, let alone for like 3 weeks? And it was hard to keep that #1 status up. Like I said, I was playing like 22 hours a day, and even with that, there was one other guy who kept really, bumping me every so often. And not only did I have the #1 status on the wins category, I had the #1 status on the lose category, and people would make fun of me for that one. I'm like, you know what? They're pickup groups, right? Pickup groups, you get what you get. And a lot of the time, you get people who have no clue, like this is their first time running through it, and they will make mistakes, and you will fail, and you will leave the group and go get a better one. It's basically what it is. And when you find a good one, you don't always get to stay with them for very long. A lot of the time, they have to run off and do raids or whatever the case is. And at that point, I had pretty much stopped doing raids. I think I left the game for like a month or two, and because I just got too burned out, I think is what it was. Anytime you're playing a game for 20 hours a day, for those of you who may never have done that, you're gonna get burned out on it pretty quickly, even a game like this. But so yeah, I left the game for a little while at that point, and then came back to it, and I got full bore into it all over again. And when you're in a raiding guild and you leave, the raiding guilds I was in back in the day, you just get booted from. I mean, if you're not there, and of course I told them I was leaving for a little while, and they're like, okay, hit us back up when you come back in, when you start playing again, and maybe we'll accept you, because we know you're a good tank, but you may not have the decent gear that we need anymore, because another expansion may have come out and all this other junk. So I didn't end up joining them again, because I wasn't sure how long I was going to stay. And then I got all wrapped up into my instances on my cleric, and it was just, it was an amazing time until I realized what it was doing to the game. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna leave for a little while. And then I came back again at Plains of Power, and that was just the last really nail in the coffin. I love the content of Plains of Power. I actually wouldn't mind having some of the raid zones that Plains of Power had. Some of the raid zones were incredibly difficult, especially the ones where you had to get like keys and things of that sort. But the whole idea of being able to teleport wherever you want, whenever you feel like it, just ruined. Like, druids were already not very sought after to begin with, and now dead completely. Because my brother played a druid, and the only time he really ever got to interact, because he was a soloer for the whole game, and he was in Burning Woods for I don't know how many months just trying to level up over there. It was so numbingly slow. I don't know how he did it, but he got max level with never getting into a group. And the only interaction he ever had with other players, other than tossing a sow on him or a sow or whatever every once in a while, was teleports. And that's how he made his cash. And when Plains of Power came out and we both came back, he was no longer able to make any money from pretty much anything. He didn't have anything anybody wanted. They weren't even able to find groups for druids for the most part. Now, occasionally in raids, you'll have a druid in there just for the change in buffs and damage shields and things of that sort. But I actually seen raids that will invite a druid in, get buffed up, and then be like, okay, now go load on your other guy, because we don't want this guy here anymore. And he'll have to load on like a cleric or something like that, or his Shadow Knight, or whatever the case is. But yeah, it killed off certain classes, wizards too, because wizards, they do tremendous amounts of damage. But if you're fighting creatures that they can get resisted on, and a lot of raid mobs get resisted extremely, has a high rate of resist, then bringing a whole bunch of wizards with you can actually lower your chance at success. And so a lot of them would favor melee types like rogues that can do tremendous amounts of damage, or necros, who they may get resisted more often, but they don't get nearly as much aggro, and they have a lot of other spells that can feed mana to other races or other classes and things of that sort. So usually it would be overlooked because they have so many other things that they can be doing if they are getting resisted, and wizards just don't have that. So again, if it isn't for the teleports, and it isn't for some of the few things that they can do, which kind of got made obsolete in Planes of Power, they just killed the classes, and it was sad. But yeah, if they could integrate those kind of hardcore zones into the game again, maybe not the exact same ones, but maybe take the feel of them, maybe go into them and see like, okay, this is what people really loved in these zones, without the teleports and that crap. I think that would be kind of a cool integration into this game. But my suggestion, because it seems like anybody who talks about this game says pretty much the same thing, which is community number one, and that's already been established. There's a great community here, great people still coming to the game. But the other thing everybody kind of agrees on is the difficulty. They come back to this game because it did take so long to level up. It did take so long to kill a mob, and every little bit of AC, whether it was just an extra 1 AC, made that big of a difference in your character. And so when they're doing these new zones that they have talked about maybe adding on to the game one day, my suggestion would be to make them harder than any of the other zones have ever been, for the pure purpose of, for those people who do not want to experience new content, they don't have to. But for the people who do want to experience new content, they obviously like a challenge, so give them one. Give them not like a nightmare scenario where you're pulling out your hair and nobody can hunt there, but anytime you have the doubt of, do we make this, is this too hard? No, it's not. Maybe it should be even a little harder, Because if it's too hard, you can make it easier. You can go in there and you can, lower the damage they're doing per second. You can lower their hit points. Whatever's easiest for you in the programming. But I think it'd be harder to make them more difficult once you've made them too easy. And again, if you make them too easy, then people have been in there killing and getting the item, and now there's a whole bunch on the server. If you make them too hard, the only thing is there's none of those items on their server, so there's nothing to fix. And so again, I would lead towards making it more difficult, because the challenge is what brings people together. Again, in other games, they make it where people can pretty much do the entire game from start to finish all by themselves. And really the only time they ever have to group is when they get to raid status. And it's pretty sad that you have to rush through the game to get to the in-game content before your game even starts. And then when you do finally start the game, there's very little in-game content in most of these new MMOs that have just come out. It seems like what they should do is come out with 2 newbie zones that will get you from level 1 to level whatever, and then have the other 60 zones in their game all raid content. Because that's pretty much how you want them to play the game anyways. You make it so easy that they can level up to max level within 4 hours of starting the game. Why give them 50 or 60 zones to go running around in if they only have 2 hours? They're not going to do that. 2 zones maybe, but not 60. How many people will stop doing what they're doing just to run off and go look around when they're getting that good of experience and they're leveling up that quickly and access to even better items than what they were getting before? And it's too fast. And concentrate more on the in-game if that's your route, but I would suggest not doing that at all, because making a game that levels that quickly just makes it that much easier for people to bypass your game altogether. They're gonna level up. Some people only ever get to max level and they don't do any raiding. They got families, they can log on for you know, 4 or 5 hours a day, if that. Sometimes only an hour a day or something, or an hour a week. And so they're very, very casual players. But even a casual player can still enjoy and play this game. You're not going to get very far very quickly, but over the course of, you know, 8, 9 months, you can get there. It may take you a year to get to max level, but you'll get there eventually, and you'll have earned it, and you'll be very, you know, familiar with your character, and you'll be able to compete in groups. You'll know what you're doing. It's one of those things that just you know, just don't be in a rush. There we go. Finally, my skill with this weapon sucks pretty bad because I think it's using. Let me go in there and see what it's using. I think it's using a skill that I wasn't doing before. Yeah, see, it's piercing, and I was using one-handed slashing, and so my skill set with piercing is pretty low, and that's why I'm missing so often. At least until that works its way up. Now, this episode might be going a little bit long, but there's one thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, and that's languages. For those of you who have not encountered that specific problem, there are NPCs in certain zones that will not speak Common Tongue. Common Tongue is what everybody is set to for the most part when they start the game. It's how you can communicate with other players. It's how you understand what they're talking about. If I was to go into my languages and set my language to Dark Elf, which I naturally know because I'm a Dark Elf. If you're a Barbarian, you know Barbarian. If you're a High Elf, you know their language. If you're a Gnome, you know their language. If I go in there and set it to Dark Elf and then type out, hey, how you doing? When somebody runs by that's not a Dark Elf and has not learned that language yet, it will show... Oh, this guy's pretty high level, I think. He's yellow. Let's see how well we're going to do. But yeah, if I run up to somebody who doesn't speak that language, they will see gibberish appear on their screen like I'm drunk and I'm just typing out random letters. No, we're not going to survive that. Let's run. I'm going to do my little shuffle, which I said I'd never do because it's a cheat, but I don't want to die while I'm talking. So let's see if we can get back to town. No, we're spinning. Now, again, if you don't know the language and somebody says something to you, let's just run straight. Ah, we're going to die. No, not in the wall. Not in the wall. You don't want that to happen. Oh man, this is sucking so bad. He's just playing with us now. Like, he knows we're dead from the poison alone. But he's just like, nah, you know what? I'll just use my gums at him for a little while and make him torture. See? He's bleeding to death there on the ground. Finally, he slays me. And now he's going to consume my corpse while I'm gone. But yeah, there's tons and tons of languages in this game that you can learn. And if somebody wants to be a butthole or just a butthead and just kind of sit there and talk in another language where only the people in his group can understand it, that kind of sucks for you. But the way you learn them in this game is to be exposed to them. So what a lot of people will do is they will group with other races, a gnome that's their friend, or a dark elf that's their friend, and they will make a macro that's several lines, /G, I like lollipops, and then /G, I hate lollipops, or whatever you want to say in that. And then you just spam that button a whole bunch of times. And the more you spam that button, the more the other player will slowly raise their skill up in that language and begin to understand it. And once they fully understand it, or as they begin to understand it, the letters will change from like pure gibberish to occasionally you'll see a letter in there that you recognize. Like, oh, okay, that looks like the word the. And that looks like lollipops, maybe with a few misspelled letters in there. And the higher your skill gets, eventually you'll just understand it, period. Which is, I think it's kind of a cool concept. A lot of games don't do that. You can just go and buy like a little book that teaches you the language, or you may have to do some kind of like quest, like in Everquest 2, they had it where you had to do the dragon tongue, which was this really, really long, drawn-out quest to learn how to speak like a dragon, which I don't mind when it's a really hard quest to do, but I think it is natural that you should be able to, in a game that's, this concentrating on realism, that you should be able to teach others your language if you understand it, and that's kind of the way it is. If you go off, and if there is a quest, I don't know if there are any quests for languages in this game, but if there are, I almost guarantee you that you should be able to teach other players that language once you know it, because that's how it works, is you speak in the language, other people understand it a little bit, and build on it from there. So again, guys, we're going to go ahead and end the episode here. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. Definitely helps grow my channel, and I greatly appreciate that. Also, if you want to leave any comments down below, you want to hit me up in game, you're more than welcome to. I love hearing back from our viewers and finding out your stories and just kind of sitting there and talking with you guys. I don't do that too much in the game as far as talking to groups because I'm doing the commentary. But in between the videos, I always constantly make sure that I'm annoying the group a little bit and starting conversation up, because I was talking to my friend ZK the other day, and he was telling me that in some of his high-level groups, they don't talk very much, and that is going to be a big no-no to me, because I'm going to make them talk whether they wanted to or not, because that is the game. This is a community game. It's an MMO. If you're not talking, if you're not socializing with the people you're grouping with, you're doing something wrong, guys. Open up those chat bars, start asking questions. You know, just be like, hey, how's everybody doing today? How's the zone going so far? A lot of trains today, or you know, make something up that people will start answering. And once you get them answering, move on to another topic, like you know, how are you guys doing today? How long have you been on? Stuff like that, and you'll be surprised just how easy the conversation starts to go after that. And we're gonna do an experiment on my cleric here pretty soon. I'm gonna get on him. We're gonna go into his probably either Mistmore or an arrest. I'm preferring Mistmore at this point because we've been in arrest for a long time. But when we go in there, we're gonna find a group that's not talking, and I'm gonna show you guys how to force them to talk, whether they want to or not. Now, my luck, I'll probably get people who don't speak English and they just won't talk at all, but I think we can do it. So again, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.